Part 2, Chapter 6 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 2, Chapter 6. Lebedeff's country house was not large, but it was pretty and convenient, especially the part which was let to the prince. A row of orange and lemon trees and jasmines, planted in green tubs, stood on the fairly wide terrace. According to Lebedeff, these trees gave the house a most delightful aspect. Some were there when he bought it, and he was so charmed with the effect that he promptly added to their number. When the tubs containing these plants arrived at the villa and were set in their places, Lebedeff kept running into the street to enjoy the view of the house, and every time he did so, the rent to be demanded from the future tenant went up with a bound. This country villa pleased the prince very much in his state of physical and mental exhaustion. On the day that they had left for Pavlovsk, that is, the day after his attack, he appeared almost well, though in reality he felt very far from it. The faces of those around him for the last 3 days had made a pleasant impression. He was pleased to see not only Colia, who had become his inseparable companion, but Lebedeff himself and all the family, except the nephew, who had left the house. He was also glad to receive a visit from General Ivolgin before leaving St. Petersburg. It was getting late when the party arrived at Pavlovsk, but several people called to see the prince and assembled in the veranda. Gania was the first to arrive. He had grown so pale and thin that the prince could hardly recognize him. Then came Varia and Ptitsin, who were rusticating in the neighbourhood. As to General Ivolgin, he scarcely budged from Lebedeff's house, and seemed to have moved to Pavlovsk with him. Lebedeff did his best to keep Ardalion Alexandrovitch by him, and to prevent him from invading the prince's quarters. He chatted with him confidentially, so that they might have been taken for old friends. During those 3 days the prince had noticed that they frequently held long conversations. He often heard their voices raised in argument on deep and learned subjects, which evidently pleased Lebedeff. He seemed as if he could not do without the general. But it was not only Ardalion Alexandrovitch whom Lebedeff kept out of the prince's way. Since they had come to the villa, he treated his own family the same. Upon the pretext that his tenant needed quiet, he kept him almost in isolation, and Muishkin protested in vain against this excess of zeal. Lebedeff stamped his feet at his daughters and drove them away if they attempted to join the prince on the terrace. Not even Vera was excepted. "They will lose all respect if they are allowed to be so free and easy. Besides, it is not proper for them," he declared at last, in answer to a direct question from the prince. "Why on earth not?" asked the latter. "Really, you know, you are making yourself a nuisance by keeping guard over me like this. I get bored all by myself, I have told you so over and over again, and you get on my nerves more than ever by waving your hands and creeping in and out in the mysterious way you do." It was a fact that Lebedeff, though he was so anxious to keep everyone else from disturbing the patient, was continually in and out of the prince's room himself. He invariably began by opening the door a crack and peering in to see if the prince was there, or if he had escaped. Then he would creep softly up to the armchair, sometimes making Muishkin jump by his sudden appearance. He always asked if the patient wanted anything, and when the latter replied that he only wanted to be left in peace, he would turn away obediently and make for the door on tiptoe, with deprecatory gestures, to imply that he had only just looked in, that he would not speak a word, and would go away and not intrude again, which did not prevent him from reappearing in 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour. Colia had free access to the prince, at which Lebedeff was quite disgusted and indignant. He would listen at the door for half an hour at a time while the two were talking. Colia found this out, and naturally told the prince of his discovery. "Do you think yourself my master, that you try to keep me under lock and key like this?" said the prince to Lebedeff. "In the country, at least, I intend to be free, and you may make up your mind that I mean to see whom I like, and go where I please." "Why, of course," replied the clerk, gesticulating with his hands. The prince looked him sternly up and down. "Well, Lukian Timofeyovitch, have you brought the little cupboard that you had at the head of your bed with you here?" "No, I left it where it was." "Impossible!" "It cannot be moved. You would have to pull the wall down, it is so firmly fixed." "Perhaps you have one like it here?" "I have one that is even better, much better. That is really why I bought this house." "Ah! What visitor did you turn away from my door about an hour ago?" The general. I would not let him in. There is no need for him to visit you, prince. I have the deepest esteem for him. He is a great man. You don't believe it? Well, you will see, and yet, most excellent prince, you had much better not receive him." "May I ask why? And also why you walk about on tiptoe, and always seem as if you were going to whisper a secret in my ear whenever you come near me?" "I am vile, vile, I know it," cried Lebedeff, beating his breast with a contrite air. "But will not the general be too hospitable for you?" "Too hospitable?" "Yes. First he proposes to come and live in my house. Well and good. But he sticks at nothing. He immediately makes himself one of the family. We have talked over our respective relations several times, and discovered that we are connected by marriage. It seems also that you are a sort of nephew on his mother's side. He was explaining it to me again only yesterday. If you're his nephew, it follows that I must also be a relation of yours, most excellent prince. Never mind about that, it is only a foible. But just now he assured me that all his life, from the day he was made an ensign to the 11th of last June, he has entertained at least 200 guests at his table every day. Finally, he went so far as to say that they never rose from the table. They dined, supped, and had tea for 15 hours at a stretch. This went on for 30 years without a break. There was barely time to change the tablecloth. Directly one person left, another took his place. On feast days he entertained as many as 300 guests, and they numbered 700 on the 1000th anniversary of the foundation of the Russian Empire. It amounts to a passion with him. It makes one uneasy to hear of it. It is terrible to have to entertain people who do things on such a scale. That is why I wonder whether such a man is not too hospitable for you and me. But you seem to be on the best of terms with him. Quite fraternal. I look upon it as a joke. Let us be brothers-in-law, it is all the same to me. Rather an honour than not. But in spite of the 200 guests and the 1000th anniversary of the Russian Empire, I can see that he is a very remarkable man. I am quite sincere.